Hello, I'm Roger Mackey, the mayor of Cloquet. I'm here in the historic west end of our town and would like to welcome all of you who are interested in helping revitalize this part of our community. We're so fortunate to have so many talented creatives in our region, and the business leaders are excited to work with you and West End Flourish to bring more people here to shop for service and to enjoy a meal or a drink or a stroll. All of us on the City Council appreciate what you bring to our community. We know that communities thrive when creativity thrives. Thank you for sharing your great ideas, and thanks to Springboard for the Arts, the Rethos Artists on Main Street program, and Oldenburg Arts and Cultural Community for making the West End flourish. Enjoy your workshop.
Hi, I'm down at the West End and right in front of the Pine Knot, looking at their not average newspaper, and no kidding, they won every award there was to win as Minnesota's most outstanding weekly newspaper. And they are a perfect example of West End Flourish. Business folks who invested in this neighborhood and are bringing all kinds of creativity and excitement to our area. So compliments to you, West End, and to Pine Knot News.
Look at me. Introduce Roger.
Hey, there was Roger Mackey just a minute ago, and he is the mayor of Cloquet and a great advocate for creativity and the West End. Thanks, Roger.
Way goofy.
All right. Thank you to Roger for sharing that video. Michelle, are you able to start the PowerPoint for us? Thanks.
Sorry, hold on.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I was going to be doing this piece, but my baby decided to wake up from her nap. And so Emily, my coworker, will be taking over this part of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Karash-Casey, and I luckily got to stop in and visit Cloquet just a couple months ago to get a quick tour of the West End district. Thanks to Holly for showing me around and showing me a lot of the details. And I'm really excited to again be back up sometime this summer when it's maybe a little warmer than the last time I was up. To begin with, a little bit about who we are at Rethos. So Rethos is a program that ultimately likes to reimagine places. We believe that communities flourish when places are reimagined, cultures are celebrated, learning is inspired, and small businesses are supported. We have a number of programs: education, Main Street, real estate, policy. The Artists on Main Street, of course, is part of our rural programs and grew out of an innovative program within the Main Street programs. We are the coordinating entity for the National Main Street program in Minnesota, and Holly and Emily have heard quite a bit about the Main Street program, and you will likely be hearing more about that as this program continues. But you are our first non-designated Main Street cohort to begin this Artist on Main Street process, which we're really excited about. Next slide. Main Street itself is an asset-based economic development program. So Main Street, while it encompasses anything from events to community organizing to flower baskets and beautification, ultimately it's an economic development program, which is what Artists on Main Street grew from. And it leverages existing assets to develop a thriving downtown. Leveraging existing assets means working with what you've got, not necessarily wishing for something that you don't have, or thinking about something that doesn't exist yet that you could maybe try to make happen, but thinking about who, what, and where you already have in your community that you can leverage to make some good things happen in your downtown district. Next slide. The Main Street 4-point approach is a framework that we work in very strongly within the Main Street program, but also we've really applied much of the learning from this process in the Artists on Main Street program. Thinking about a comprehensive approach to community transformation and using innovative different means to create growth and progress in a district. And ultimately, the Main Street approach provides a framework. So we give you a map, we give you ideas, but we don't give you a prescriptive checklist that says, do step A, then step B, then step C. It looks different in every community. So your progress, growth, needs will be different than your neighbors down the road. Next slide. The Main Street Network has folks all over the state of Minnesota. We are mostly centered in the southeast quadrant of the state right now. We have some folks out in the west central area. Our rural programs have been doing a project out in Otter Tail County, and we're really excited to develop some relationships with communities up in the northeast. Other towns that are in the cohort, the Artists on Main Street cohort that you are. So Cloquet, Cook, Mahnomen, and Two Harbors are the 4 communities in this Artists on Main Street cohort. So you are all going through this process together. The Cloquet leaders have been in trainings and workshops with the Two Harbors, Cook, Mahnomen folks. So you're learning together as a whole. You can see some photos from different events that happened at Main Streets, a concert series that happened, some different workshops that have happened in the past. A Main Street Directors Gathering that took place, oh gosh, a couple years ago when we could meet in person without thinking twice about it. But we offer a lot of different options for trainings that have really influenced how we think and work on the Artists on Main Street program. Next slide. Thank you. Ultimately, something to think about that we reflect on regularly in Main Street and that we want to really include in the Artists on Main Street planning and thoughts is that downtown is for everybody. So it's not just for businesses, it's not just for tourists, it's not just for 30-year-olds, it's for everybody. And Main Street leaders should advocate for quality design that makes it easier for everybody to take part in the Main Street district. So elderly folks, people with mobility issues, people with little kids, people with sensory issues that maybe need a little help interacting with programs. We want you to be thinking of a broad audience of folks when you're thinking about your programming and not just a specific niche audience. Next. A little history on the Artists on Main Street program itself. So it began in 2018 with 3 pilot communities, Winona, Mankato, and Faribault. These 3 pilot communities went through a few years of programming. I actually was the Main Street director in Winona during this pilot project, so I am excited to say that I've luckily had a view of what this project looks like from the beginning, and that's something I'm super grateful for. And continued the next year into more designated Main Street communities in Wilmer, Olivia, Northfield, and Wabasha. These programs were incredibly successful. As you can see, over 200 plus artists were involved. Thousands of people in the communities engaged with artist programming in some capacity, from public events to viewing installations to hearing concerts or checking out surprise art pieces that were installed and meant to be a surprise happening that people came upon. So the cohort that you are part of, was supposed to start last year. We opened it up to non-Main Street communities for the first time in the end of 2019. Over 40 communities applied to be part of this final Main Street cohort. 4 of you were accepted. And then COVID hit. So as much as we would have loved for things to get going last year, we ultimately knew that we had to take a pause. So it's been sitting around for a little while, waiting for COVID to lighten up, for safe ways to gather again. And so we're excited now in 2021 to be really hitting the ground running with all of you in Cloquet with Artists on Main Street. Next. All right, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Emily. So as I mentioned, I'm the Rural Program Director at Springboard for the Arts. So we kind of built this program in partnership with Rethos with the idea that that smaller rural communities throughout Minnesota already have a lot of creative capacity, and that that we saw this opportunity to help local downtown and Main Street leaders learn how to effectively collaborate with their creative community. So we're just so thrilled to both work with Rethos and then also with Emily and Holly right in Cloquet. And it was, like Emily said, a pretty competitive application process. We were overwhelmed with communities that applied. And so congratulations to all of you, even though it's a year of waiting. We're really happy to be getting this off the ground. So for those of you who maybe haven't heard of Springboard, I just wanted to share a little bit about what we do. So we're a community and economic development organization for artists, and we have headquarters both in St. Paul and in Fergus Falls. And our rural program will actually turn 10 years old this June. So the Artists on Main Street program kind of folds into a larger set of programs that really help look to address the unique needs of rural communities and their artists. But Springboard as a whole has a number of programs to support individual artists. So if you haven't looked at those resources, we always have workshops that now are virtual and you can join from anywhere for free. There's a workshop coming up that I think is really exciting. It's actually about how to archive old footage from like VHS to digital format. So, but then we even do workshops that cover how to price your work or navigating legal issues in your art career. So I'll put our event list or our event schedule in the chat for you to peruse in case there's anything you want to participate in. At Springboard, so my job right now over the next few minutes, I just want to share some ways to think about art and community, and especially in the context of this project. You're all here today because the West End Flourish program has money to provide for artists to do small projects over the next number of months. And so I wanted to share some examples of really incredible and impactful small arts and community projects that we've seen, just to kind of get your juices flowing and start to kind of see how other people have approached this kind of work. So that's what I'm going to share right now. And before I do that, I just wanted to share that at Springboard, we have a really wide definition of what art is and who artists are. So my favorite thing is when people come to our workshops and we have the full spectrum. We have professional artists that are showing in galleries or performing across the country, but we also have carpenters and people who sing in church choirs and people who craft hats and mittens for their kids. So we think that full spectrum of creativity is so important in a community. And we love this definition from Alan Capro, where he said that art is a weaving of meaning-making activity within any or all parts of our lives. And that's really what art and creativity can do, whether it's those little gestures of being creative throughout your day, or whether it's a more formal arts experience. So, and that picture there is actually an artist that worked with us to make paper out of invasive plants. So she made pulp from invasive prairie plants to just kind of foster some conversation about the role of the prairie in our region, and also just create these joyful moments of making something from scratch. So I just love that picture alongside of that definition. And then the other thing we talk about broadly at Springboard is this idea of creative people power. And this is really what we're always trying to cultivate, is this sense of creative people power in every community, because we think that when you have support for artists, and when you have invitations such as with West End Flourish for artists to get involved and show up as leaders and be supported, that you really can help communities get unstuck from issues that maybe are holding them back from their full potential, or maybe are keeping everyone from feeling welcome or participating. And artists can really open up those possibilities and help us reframe problems. So when you hear us say creative people power, we're just kind of talking broadly about the impact that creativity can have in strengthening communities overall. And I wanted to kind of unpack this term of creative placemaking that a lot of the art and community development world is really framed around, and to acknowledge that this word creative placemaking was really a buzzword over the last 10 years. I think in some ways it's already starting to be replaced by other ways of talking about art and community. But to acknowledge that creative placemaking is something that humans have always done throughout history. And so I like to kind of show some examples of creative placemaking, especially in like a rural context, that maybe we wouldn't immediately think about as like a formal gesture of creative placemaking, but even, it's the things that humans do to show who they are maybe as a family or an individual or as a collective community. So we see people, expressing themselves through holiday lights during the winter, or repurposing old dishes to landscape their yard, making surprising little wayside installations out on their farmland, or making a parade, like one of the most classic small town traditions, where you're really showing what you're proud of, making space for everyone to get involved. So creative placemaking is nothing, super groundbreaking, but we're kind of in this world where we have to, I think, be even more intentional about it, because there is so much kind of keeping us from connecting to one another, that we're really always trying to make sure that it's an intentional act. This is how we think about it. So it's the act of people coming together to change overlooked and undervalued public and shared spaces into welcoming places where community gathers, supports one another, and thrives. And there's a really important kind of sense of scale here, where places can be animated and enhanced by elements that encourage human interaction. And I'd really emphasize that idea of human interaction in this work. From temporary acts such as performances and chalked poetry to permanent installations such as landscaping and unique art. So we could literally all walk out of our door today and do an act of creative placemaking, or we can spend years doing something at a much larger scale, and it's all super important. And what we're working towards with West End Flourish is to give as many artists as possible in your community a chance to do some small scale placemaking projects over the next 6 to 8 months or so. And so I'm going to share some projects from other communities that were the same size. You're going to have the chance to propose projects that are up to $1,000 through this project. And so I have some slides of other projects that have happened at that same scale, just to give you some inspiration. So I'm going to start with St. Paul. Even though I'm the rural program director, I didn't have a lot to do with these projects, but I think there's some really fun examples that'll just kind of hopefully get you starting to think about your community in terms of the people that these projects could impact, the locations you could explore doing projects around, and so forth. So on the top there is dance performance that took place. Well, actually, all of these projects took place during the construction of the Green Line light rail in St. Paul. And so we use this example because it's a way you can take something that most people would see as a big chaotic problem, lots of construction, lots of foot traffic blocked off to businesses, and actually turn it around into an opportunity to reimagine a space altogether. Many years ago, we supported artists to do projects during that construction period. So on the top, there's a performance of a dance group that used a vacant theater. Now it's actually the Victoria Theater, which now is being revitalized. At the time, though, it was completely vacant, and they did some projections of a video and then live performance in front of the building. And what you can't see is that the audience is actually sitting on the curb amidst parked construction equipment for the night. And so it's a way of kind of helping the community see what a place could look like if it was imagined or revitalized. And sometimes it just takes those moments of seeing life again in a vacant building to help people imagine what could happen. I'll go through some of these a little quicker than others, but on the bottom, you can, we've had artists do just very simple, but just really impactful installations. So in this case, there was a glass artist that just beautified a chain link fence that happened to be at a very busy intersection and gave people something more lovely to stare at while they waited in traffic. On the right is an artist that made a puppet of a black dog for the Black Dog Cafe. And so he kind of acted as this ambassador that went around the neighborhood and reminded people that this cafe exists, and that you should go and both get a cup of coffee and maybe you will encounter the big puppet black dog on your way. And then on the top is an artist that made a fold out table that folded up, and then he could cart it around on his bike and would set up different supplies that would encourage people to just sit down and take a moment out of their day to sit with the people that maybe they pass by every day and don't know anything about. So just a way to kind of invite people to get to know their neighbors. I'm going to zoom to Fergus Falls and talk about another similar project we did here in my community called the Year of Play. And Fergus Falls a couple of years ago had a number of closures. And so there was kind of this doom and gloom narrative going around, and it was very, very difficult just for people to kind of see any hope in the community. And so we decided to invite artists to do projects that would inspire play and surprise and really highlight the things we do have in the community and the things that we want to have, which is a big part of this work, is kind of demonstrating what is possible. And even if you can't make a permanent solution, maybe you can at least show people what it might feel like to have that solution eventually. So we did this program called the Year of Play and invited artists to do projects. These were actually really small projects, only $500. So it was often just the artist paying themselves to be kind of a facilitator or to pay other artists to perform and so forth. So we had everything from an artist, dancer, Ayumi Schaefer, who led a choreographed dance on a frozen lake in the middle of downtown to kind of remind people that this is a beautiful place at all seasons and we should take care of it and be good stewards of it. To Jake Crone on the top there, who made a pop-up park by the river. He used some of his money to actually rent those parking spots from the city, and then assembled just some beautiful seating to show folks what it would feel like to actually have more space that is right up by the river. Because in Fergus Falls, we happen to just have parking lots right up to the river, which is really sad. And so it was a way to show some other ways we could think about the downtown layout. And then Jake on the bottom left there also saw the community having some pretty contentious conversations about a splash pad. You would think that, that would be a fun conversation, but the community was very divided. We had kind of a lot of naysayers that said there's no kids here. Why would we want a splash pad? So he made a pop-up splash pad to demonstrate that there are families here that would use something like this. And so it was just this really powerful way to show in a way that you can't show through surveys or even like town hall meetings, that there's a need and there's a desire for a certain service or amenity in a community. And then one of my favorites on the right, Dominic Facio, organized a catwalk party, which was actually a drag show and just a really incredible evening of welcoming and support to the LGBTQ community in Fergus Falls, and something that he was able to launch through the Year of Play, but because of the response and support, it's now become a staple event that before COVID was happening every few months. So these projects, you know, they're not meant to necessarily solve every problem in one swoop, but they are a way to try things out and kind of get a sense of a response so that you can build off of these and take off, let them take off on their own. Emily or Serena, we're gonna share a few examples from artists on Main Street now, so you can see what artists have done through this program that you'll be participating in. And Emily, do you wanna talk about this?
I can. So if you look at the top left, the flowers that you see, this is an artist in Faribault in part of the first cohort. This is a temporary installation. As you can see, there are these bump outs for crosswalks that have, there's some plants in it. Sometimes they're really well kept, sometimes they're not. But Faribault was trying to embrace more public art, but in a historic downtown are limited by what kind of murals can happen on historic buildings. And they worked with this artist to create native plants, murals that were temporary that could go up and down and even be moved. The photo directly below it, the chalk box. You may be familiar with little free libraries where people walk by, grab a book. This is the little free library idea, but with chalk. In Mankato, in their Old Town district, they were working on making it feel more like a vibrant community, getting folks to slow down. There's a road that people travel really fast through there, and they focused on activating their alley behind the buildings as a place for people to slow down, to gather, to linger, to be creative. And the chalk box just always had chalk in it. People could grab chalk, draw on the sidewalk, leave some art for the next person. Adults and kids really enjoyed being able to add their mark in downtown. Moving around counterclockwise, the photo of the musicians is a photo from Winona, the first year of the cohort. In Winona, a group of young artists got together and created a pop-up art event in downtown Winona. There were artists who had their tents with arts for sale. There were spoken word performances throughout the day. They had bands performing in the street. And this is the first time there had been any sort of major art event like this in the downtown streets. Winona, if those of you are familiar, has a park with a lovely events area in downtown technically, but is 3 blocks off the core business district. So events in the park did not draw business into the existing downtown locations. And the goal of this event was to draw folks into the businesses, as well as encourage artists to interact with downtown in a new way. Since this event, 2 new businesses have opened, and many businesses had their best day of the year with sales because of that art fair event. Above it, that red button that you see is an example of an art installation that was meant to be a surprise find. It was not publicized. It was not really noted anywhere, but it was called Jungle Soundscape. This button and frame were mounted on the side of a building and hooked up to speakers. It's on a building next to an empty lot where there had been a fire that it was joked that it was the jungle lot of downtown. And so this artist created jungle sounds. So when you push the red button, you heard toucans and monkeys and the sounds you would hear in a jungle, and you would walk by, push the button, and get to hear jungle sounds. All right, so this next slide has images from Wabasha, which was part of the second cohort. Wabasha is a very small town in southeast Minnesota, right along the Mississippi River. And you can see three really different ideas that Wabasha, which is a tiny little town, was able to make happen in some really cool ways. The top mosaic picture is an artist that collaborated through the Wabasha Library, which is located in their downtown, to create a mosaic of their really iconic bridge that goes over the Mississippi River. She separated each little piece of the bridge out onto a piece of paper. Local kids colored their piece of paper. The mosaic was reassembled and was hanging in the library, and kids could bring their families to show off their piece of this mosaic. Below that is Michelle, I am blanking on the name of this project, but do you remember what it was called? Well, I'll tell you what it's about and maybe the name will come to me.
Memory suitcase?
Yeah, something like that. The artist went to different events in downtown. So the farmers market, there are a lot of festivals throughout the summer and fall in Wabasha. And the artist would ask people for their stories about Wabasha, growing up there, a favorite memory, something about Wabasha that was really special to them. And she wrote that story down on a piece of paper that she had created. She made the paper and stitched them all into a book. And this book went into this old suitcase that traveled around that folks could view at different events or at the library. And it got to the point where she had hundreds of stories, but people would stop her when she was just out and about, out at dinner, out on a walk, and say, I haven't given you my story yet. I need to give you my story. I want my story to be included in the storybook. The final tall sculpture that you see is a piece of work created by a metal artist that used old bicycle pieces, welded them together, and created this eagle in a nest. Wabasha is the home of the National Eagle Center. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of visitors that come to Wabasha because of the Eagle Center. And this is kind of an iconic representation of what Wabasha is becoming known for out of recycled bicycle parts.
Do you want me to do these ones, Emily?
Yes. Would you at least do the Wilmer ones? I can do Northfield.
Yeah, so we just wanted, I mean, these are just to show you the impact of lots of little and just show a lot of different mediums of artists doing their work. So another artist in Wilmer, John Salgado Maldonado, did an exhibit of just highlighting the diversity of the community in Wilmer. And what I love is that you can really see like an intergenerational and cross-cultural conversation happening as a result of that exhibit. So, you can take kind of traditional ideas for your art form, but but then adding that community interaction to it is really key for the success of these projects. And then did you say you wanted to talk about the Northfield one?
Yeah, I can talk about Northfield. So in Northfield, they have, again, bridges seem to be a theme in our downtowns in Minnesota. And they had a bridge that connects their downtown with another part of town. They had a fiber artist that wove patterns, as you can see, into the railings of their downtown bridge that expanded into an area of a river walk on the other side that folks travel back and forth over, but usually they're just going to their destination. And this encouraged them to stop, slow down, look around a little bit more, and even consider fiber arts in a new way. So often we think of sculptures and paintings and not always other mediums for arts out and about in our downtown. The last photo that you can see, was this also Northfield or was this Faribault?
I think this was actually Wilmer,
Oh, okay, this
but I
was
could
one.
be wrong. I could be wrong.
Faribault did a chalk art one too, but this is temporary chalk spray paint that you can see that the artist created wing. You can see the stencil is half of a wing that created a photo op for folks that they could take selfies with inspirational sayings. The paint that they used was, again, temporary, so it didn't permanently change any infrastructure, but became a really cool destination for people to seek out for sharing selfies, for just sharing the fact that they were out and about in downtown, which then made other people want to come and check it out themselves. Is there anything you want to add about that one, Michelle?
No, I think that's good.
Great.
We'll keep moving here. So hopefully those projects give you just some ideas of the full range of projects you might be able to do in Cloquet. And if you might see some themes, there's a lot of projects that kind of get people to pause, get people to talk to each other, or make them think differently about the built landscape. So those are hopefully you're starting to already think of ideas, and we're going to have some time after Emily and Holly talk to brainstorm. I did want to acknowledge that we are living in a pandemic and that things are still uncertain even as the vaccination rollout happens. So we do encourage you to consider safety as you're thinking of project ideas. And there's actually a lot that artists can still do even while adhering to social distancing guidelines. So these are just some ideas that we've seen throughout this pandemic of how artists are still engaging their communities. So everything from doing shared but distanced experiences. So thinking about how to help people, like making art kits that people can maybe bring home, but then create public art with. Connecting through the mail or even phone or texting. There might be some interesting ways to use those mediums. Supporting businesses by maybe partnering up and doing a virtual concert. Hopefully with summer coming, we can do a little more outdoor gatherings, but it's just something to keep in mind. We're seeing a lot of artists showing gratitude for their local healthcare workers through art, and especially addressing the social isolation that the pandemic has caused for more vulnerable communities. So thinking about maybe the people who are elderly or who live in group homes that are more vulnerable, and maybe just ways that they might be able to connect while being isolated. And then even like sharing, working with public health entities to share public health messaging. Those are just some of the things we've seen artists doing. So we wanted to mention that. We will be sharing this presentation so that you can refer back for any projects that you found to be interesting, or even if you want to connect to the artist to learn a little bit more about how they did it, we can probably help facilitate that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and pause for 1 minute. The next thing we're going to do, just recognizing that if we were in person, we would have a lot more opportunities to do some like interaction, and maybe this is usually the part where we love to facilitate what we call an observation tour of your of the district where you are going to be invited to do projects. So recognizing that we just talked for a long time, we're going to talk a little bit more now, passing it to Holly and Emily to share about the goals and how you can apply for the West End Flourish opportunity. And then once they're done, we're going to do some fun brainstorming as a group, just to see what ideas are percolating out there in the room, and hopefully send you off feeling very equipped and excited to get planning on a project. So I'm going to pass it on to, is it Emily starting or Holly? I apologize, I can't remember.
I think Holly's starting. Before you jump in, Holly, I do just want to say, I know that Holly will be a great resource when it comes to questions about what is okay to plan and what isn't okay to plan in a pandemic. Just with different Minnesota dial turns, they seem to be changing so frequently. If you have questions, I'm sure, so Holly, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sure it's okay to reach out to Holly, or you can reach out to me as well. I know that's something that's a little tricky to navigate right now. So please reach out with any questions about what kind of programming maybe needs to adhere to certain guidelines. But Holly, turning it over to you.
All right, guys, hopefully you can see my screen here. I'm going to share my screen. And let's see here. Got some, oops, here. I've got this bar in my way here. There we go. All right. Okay. All right, can you guys see my screen okay? All right, fantastic. Well, I'm going to start off by apologizing. I'm a geographer. I'm not an artist, but I am the daughter of an artist. My dad was a art teacher in Madison, Wisconsin for 39 years at La Follette High School, and is from Duluth. And so he got his master's degree from UMD. And so I grew up in this area, spending my summers with a lot of his artist friends. So I get you people. So happy to give a quick overview on Cloquet here today. A little bit, hopefully this is advancing okay. This is not advancing okay. I am locked up. So let's see. Here we go. Okay, there we go. All right, just wanted to talk a little bit. The City of Cloquet did a downtown revitalization strategy in 2017. And so us being selected, we really feel is just about us being prepared where opportunity meets, you know, this preparation that we've done. We looked at our Cloquet Avenue corridor and then our historic West End business corridor, and really want to be a city that embraces our pride in our local history, moves towards creating gathering places, can be a place where people can have retail attractions, business destinations, downtown housing opportunities, district visibility and aesthetics, and to have a lot of community partnerships as we move forward. I must not be hitting this hard enough. I am sorry here. Emily, if I keep having issues, I'm going to turn this over to you because it is not advancing very nicely for me, and I don't know why.
You tried using your mouse instead to.
Let's try that. Let's try that. And that doesn't seem to be working either. Oh, okay, that's gonna do it. All right, so a little bit about the City of Cloquet. You can see on the bottom here, the Cloquet Avenue Business District, our riverfront, and then I circled in red here, our West End Business District, which will be really the core focus of where we hope to have your artistic sprinkling of pixie dust in that area. A little bit about Cloquet. This is a snapshot. Hopefully you guys can still see this. I have a lot of stuff covering my screen, but this is a snapshot from the 1930s of the West End. City Hall was located at 105 Arch Street. You see a fountain in front of it. That is now what we call Wentworth Park. It is now just green space with a parking lot there, but back in the day it had a fountain. And then on the bottom left, Cloquet did not have a Highway 33 until about 1965. And so this is a snapshot over the St. Louis River, and it teed into, you either went to Cloquet Avenue or you came down Avenue D into the West End, which is certainly different from what it is today. In the 1960s, City Hall had moved out of the West End Business District onto Cloquet Avenue into a building where today's Fire Hall is located. And you can see this is what the buildings look like in the 1960s. You can certainly see a transition in our history from to more highway-oriented types of developments and turning our backs on our downtowns. A quick snapshot of what happened in 1895, MnDOT raised the highway bridge over the St. Louis River. And with that raising of the bridge, our direct off-ramp into the West End District and into the riverfront corridor was eliminated. And so that bridge was heightened, which further challenged the visibility of the district, further limited traffic circulation into the district, and further led to lack of vibrancy, storefront vacancies, increasing in other types of industrial traffic patterns. But as you go through today, we've worked very hard to get some bike lanes and some aesthetics and some park development down there today. So this is a quick snapshot of where we're at today. We still have very nicely intact, strong architectural character in the district. We do have some bright spots. We've got coffee shop, flower shop, salon, chiropractic offices, newspaper office, rock shop, smoke shop, attorneys and financial offices, and some occasional use buildings. So we do have some activity there still today. Wanted to just give you a quick 101 tour, and then I probably didn't send Emily a nice map of the district, but I will do that in the future. But starting in the upper left-hand corner, this is the historic City Hall building, located really in the corner of the district. Below that is the First National Bank Plaza at 207 Avenue C, a beautiful building. Wanted to just point out below that building is a Knights of Columbus. It's actually a really pretty building inside of it. It's wide open, high ceilings, nicely renovated. Below that, we have a Masonic Temple on the corner of Avenue D and Arch Street there. You can see it with the broken awnings there. It's really cool. It's got a vacant stage in there where they used to do knighting ceremonies. It's tremendously cool. And then I just wanted to show kind of how challenged we are with, this is our entry point. This is what it looks like when you look into the West End. It's a parking lot and some trees and things. This is Folly Park, which is the historic train with a conductor that held the time and got a lot of folks out after the 1918 fires. And then just wanted to point out the Common Grounds, the Historic Chief Theater. And that's just a quick 101 tour. I just highlight that the city of Cloquet owns the parking lot behind the VFW, the parking lot actually across the street in front of Wentworth Park. And so just wanted to note that as well. Interesting to me as a geographer, there were no murals that were done in 2004 as part of our city's 100-year city centennial. They all really occurred in the downtown of Cloquet Avenue. So that was interesting to just notice. The West End is home to the highest concentration, obviously, of historic buildings, significant buildings, and involvement in art was part of the plan we put together as a city in 2017. We feel there's a lot of opportunities to heighten the visibility of the West End through improved aesthetics, revitalizing buildings and their historic natural materials, getting commercial activity into our empty storefronts, improving our entry into the district, as it really is the historical heart of our city, and an entryway into our riverfront, and a great opportunity for entrepreneurs. So with that, thank you for your participation here today, and we're very much interested in you sprinkling your artistic pixie dust with us.
Okay, Emily Kurish-Casey, do you want to bring up the my part of the presentation? Thanks. So this is our workshop. Just go ahead and advance the slide. Again, that iconic picture taken of the West End with that beautiful rainbow. And this is I've sent out a link in the chat to the Oldenburg Arts and Cultural website. The West End Flourish page is there because some of the materials you're going to need for your proposals are there. And and this presentation will be there, and some of the news coverage that we've had will all be there. So next slide, quick, and I just wanted to indicate that this is probably where you registered, so you kind of are familiar with that link as well. Next slide. And here's the long run that you'll get that will include the backgrounder and the proposal application materials. I want to encourage you to take a look today when you get a chance. We've posted a really wonderful video of Jeff Savage, who's the director of the Fond du Lac Reservation Museum and Cultural Center, that gives you the historic past and the actual definition or naming of the city of Cloquet, which is that it refers to the city in terms, or the area in terms of portage. If you were coming from Superior or coming from the Mississippi River and then going to Lake Superior, you would see Cloquet as a node. And there was a French anatomist who was named Cloquet, who defined this idea of a node or gathering place based on the fact that there's a lymph node in the human leg that kind of resembles the way the St. Louis River bends there and goes toward Cloquet. So I encourage you to take a look at that video when you get a chance to. Next slide. Okay, so you've accomplished number one. If you want to do a project, you've taken a look at, you've participated in the workshop, and as we said, you'll have a little bit more time to reflect on that because it'll be on the website. What you want to do is develop a project that includes one creative, that'd be you, and one West End community collaborator. Might be a business, might be a nonprofit, might be a school, all kinds of ideas. And then you want to prepare your proposal and submit it to me by midnight or the minute before on May 28th, 2001. I want to offer that you can also use that email to get to me and ask any kind of question you have about your proposal. Feel very free to get a little technical assistance as you need it. Next slide, Emily. Here's what will go into the proposal. Your project name, and the encouragement is to make it something catchy. Your project summary, and you don't need to use proposal language in any formal way. Just describe your project as you would to somebody that you're visiting with. Your name, how we find you with your address, phone, mail, email, website if you have one. And how you would describe yourself. And again, this isn't all about we don't need your curriculum vitae or anything like that. We just need to know what you like to do as an artist and why you define yourself as an artist, and just briefly. And then your community collaborator, your partner, or two or three, and how to find them. And if you are part of an organization, how you would describe what its goals are and what its programs are. If it's you, it's what you with your what you hope to do with your particular art project and where you think it will be. So that's the essence of the cover page. Next slide. Again, just to reiterate that these are all projects that we hope will happen in the last half of 2021. And here's the part of the proposal where you get to expand a little bit on all of that. You want to tell a little bit about what you are hoping to do, what the story is of your project. When you download the proposal guidelines, you'll see the goals of these projects on page 4, and I'll cover them briefly here. And then a description of your project, what you're going to do, how does it work with arts and culture? If there's an existing piece that you're building on, how is it new or different? And what you'll be doing, the timeline, how you see this all rolling out, and how you'll reach people, and how you'll let them know about your activity or event. And then anything else you want to say about this. I'm just going to use one example. Many of you probably saw the great video that Krista Gardner did with Sarah Faust at the Crowned Hair Salon about the West End Flourish workshop. She posted it on Facebook just to try to build a little bit of an audience. Well, what if Krista decided to team up with Sarah Faust and they decided to take the name of the salon, Crowned, and came up with a fun, funky idea of how to make crowns and get us all down there to do a photo op in front of the Crown Salon. Some fun idea like that is a partnership of an artist and a creative might just give you a place to start. Next slide. You can attach, if you think it would help us understand your project, anything that tells the story. We're just looking for a few images, and you can, up to 3 is good, and we'll take a look at them so that we understand what you're telling us. Next slide. The budget is pretty straightforward. Your time, if as you cost that out, of course, your time is more valuable than the money that we have available, but you want to make sure that you're recognizing the fact that you are going to be putting some time into this, the materials that you might use. An example might be transportation. If you needed to have a way to get people to your event, something like that. Maybe it's an access accommodation so that the event works for people with hearing impairments or folks needing translations, that kind of thing. You could include that idea as an other. And then income sources. The grants are up to $1,000, and you can include other, for example, what if Krista and Sarah got a contribution from Rotary to make that event happen, and so maybe they have $200 there, and what could include that with other. So that would mean you would total up your incomes and your income and your expense, and they should equal each other. So that's the simple budget that we're looking for. Next slide. We have a selection committee put together, and we will take a look at all of the proposals and spread the funds as far as we possibly can and let you know by the 15th of June. You're going to get a little contract that explains just some of the details of our agreement, and you'll get 80% of the project support when you start. You'll get the balance when we finish and you submit your final report. The other thing that goes along with this is that we really hope you will communicate and promote your project as you're doing it, so that people are able to follow along or attend, and we'll help with that promotion as well. So we want to make sure that you give credit if it fits. If there's a postcard or a flyer or something like that involved, you can give credit to the people that are helping to put this project together. And then there will be a final report required. It isn't long, it isn't complicated, but it will require a little update list of your budget, and you'll get that when your project is confirmed, and you can submit that and get the final 20% of your balance of your grant. So that is what happens when your proposal is selected. There's one little footnote on the next slide we want to tell you about, and that is you will, if your project is over $600, you will find that it's taxable income, and you'll get a W-9. And so you do need to be aware that you'll have to give that, put that into your taxes, your folder for taxes for next year as well. So that's the detail on how proposals go together. And this is just a little content. The next slide, Emily. The next slide just covers a couple of the things that were in our proposal to Springboard and Rethos about why this was a good idea and how to help change the narrative of our West End. And so these are some of the thoughts that we had about this, in case they're helpful to you as you write your proposal of the ideas that we're hoping will happen. Next slide too. Just again, you will have all this information available to you, but you obviously know how beautiful our river is and what an important part of our community that is. You know that the Anishinaabe people have been here for a very long time, and you can watch the video that Jeff Savage created with us to give us some background on that. We'll also have a video in the next day or two of one of our Carleton County Historical Society leaders talking about growing up in the West End and her memories of it. We have a great tribal college, and if you want to think about partnering with them, they certainly are a great hinge in our community. We also know that, and you heard it from Holly, how much we value all the creatives that are here. And we know that you have a lot to offer to bring our West End back to a vital and fun place to be. So thanks a whole bunch, and we welcome all of your ideas. I think that concludes the local portion of this presentation.
So I think we have thanks so much, Emily. I think we have a few minutes if people have questions about the proposal process that Emily just went through. We can take some time now. She also has made herself available if you want to reach out one-on-one as well. But before we move to the next thing, are there any questions people want to throw out there?